Here are some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. It's another speakerless week for the House of Representatives. With no frontrunner, House Republicans plan to interview at least 9 members as a candidate for them. The old guard is pushing for Minnesota's Tom Emmer, who currently holds the number 3 leadership position. The Republican primaries are starting to get muddy as we get closer to the January start. First, former Vice President Mike Pence has clearly stalled and can't even qualify for the next Republican debate. And then there is Liz Cheney hinting that she might get in as the sane choice. In Israel, the fighting continues and may be spreading to Lebanon. Concerns about the safety of Americans there have prompted the State Department to urge an immediate evacuation. And in England, there was a breakthrough in pacemaker technology. The first patient is trying out a tiny new device that took only 30 minutes under the knife to put in. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Stinchfield. We are getting new information, exclusive information from our friends over the new federal state of China, which raise serious questions about China's ultimate involvement in this war in Israel between Israel and Hamas. China may have far deeper involvement than we ever expected. Apparently, whistleblowers from inside the Chinese Communist Party, whistleblowers who risk their lives to get us this information, are giving us 5 important pieces of information. One talks about the bomb that went off inside Gaza at that hospital. We were told it was from an errant rocket, that it most certainly wasn't from Israel. Well, now we're being told from these whistleblowers that it was most certainly on purpose, and it was designed to derail any meeting between Joe Biden and Middle Eastern countries, which it most certainly did. Remember, Jordan canceled meetings with Joe Biden. There was a PR move. For the initial reaction was much of the world turned against Israel. There may even be indications that a bomb was set off inside that hospital. The other piece of information is the intelligence failures. How does that happen? The Mossad in Israel is one of the greatest intelligence gathering organizations on the face of the earth. How did they miss this attack? Well, these whistleblowers inside China tell the new federal state of China that Chinese Communist Party leaders supplied Hamas with technology, new technology, from Chinese companies like Huawei and Xiaomi that allowed Hamas to hide and conceal communications from any other intelligence officers that were trying to intercept those communications. That may be one way they got around and got this through. We're also seeing that China may be supplying massive amounts of weapons to Hamas. How else can you explain what appears to be an unlimited supply of missiles, rockets, and ammunition that Hamas has its hands on? Going all the way back many years, there has been reporting that China was supplying Hamas with missiles. Now we're seeing some of these missiles flying further and with more precision, which leads us to believe these whistleblowers may be spot on when it comes to the fact that China could be providing Hamas with all of these weapons. Now, here's where it gets very interesting. China apparently plans on entering Gaza under the ruse of providing humanitarian aid. But it will not be relief workers that go into Gaza, but PLA militants. That's the Liberation Army, to destroy evidence and destroy all the evidence related to the supply of weapons, ammunition, missiles that Hamas was getting from China. And lastly, all of this, why would China get involved in this, is because they want to weaken the United States. The United States involved in a war in Europe with Ukraine, involved in a war in the Middle East with Israel, weakens America for the sole goal that China would end up taking over the United States' role as the world leader. It all makes sense. What scares me now is that if this information gets out, and it is starting to get out, it sucks us into a deeper conflict with China. Because if China really was supplying weapons to take out Israelis, this puts us at the brink of World War III, and that would be devastating for everyone. This is Antony Blinken talking about Iran today.
President Biden, in his Oval Office address, said that the U.S. would hold Iran accountable. What does accountable mean?
Well, what you've seen already, Margaret, is a very clear message from the president, backed up by the deployment of two of our largest aircraft carrier battle groups, to make sure that it's clear no one should take advantage of this moment to escalate to further attacks on Israel, or for that matter, attacks on us, on our personnel. And this is not by way of, in terms of what we're doing by provocation. It's designed to deter.
So this is the problem. While they are so focused on Iran, do not forget that China pulls the strings now of Iran. China is propping up that regime. And what does this mean now? Does this mean we go head-to-head with China? To me, the whole prospect is frightening if China really did get this involved. Most of the information we get from these whistleblowers inside the Chinese CCP always turns out to be true, which is why I report it to you tonight. So to help me break it all down is the woman who gave me this information from the new federal state of China, the organization trying to take down the CCP. With so many whistleblowers, they're risking their lives to get us this information. Nicole Tsai joins us tonight. Nicole, welcome to the program.
Hey, Grant, thank you so much for having us, and thank you for giving us a platform to give this critical intel to the entire international community. And we hope this info and intel could help the U.S. and Israel and all the peace-loving country and people from around the world to defeat the CCP.
You know, Nicole, it certainly amps up the need to rein in the CCP and make sure we put them in check. The other aspect of this information is it puts us on a direct path to maybe even military conflict with China if they actually were supplying weapons this way to Hamas, and even telecommunications equipment designed to hide their intentions.
Well, the CCP has already went from behind the scene bad actor being on the front, because they already sent 6 warships to the Middle East region, and they have also been provocating conflicts with the Philippines in the South China Sea. And everything has confirmed that the CCP is stirring the pots in different locations because they want to, get U.S. and UK involved to start World War III. So this is not just prophecy. This is happening right before our eyes.
All right, Nicole, let's break down some of the information. This technology given to Hamas, named from these whistleblowers, is companies like Huawei. We know about them. 5G technology trying to infiltrate the United States. Another huge company, Xiaomi. What does this technology consist of? Did they tell you any of that? And what was going on here?
Well, I think people in this country are very familiar with Huawei, and it's a massive lobbying effort in Washington, D.C., and facing the increasing sanction from the U.S. and pressure from the Europe, Huawei has turned to Middle East for expansion. Just last month, Huawei launched its first public cloud service in that region, and also a data service center in the capital of Saudi Arabia. Huawei has signed more than 200 government-related clients in that region. And so that's why the CCP replaced Hamas militants' cell phone with Huawei, because it blocks, the signals, and it blocks the, tracking from the U.S. and the Mossad. So this could be a major reason why Mossad and the U.S. intel community missed the signals. And also, let's not forget that one of the Huawei's most prominent lobby person is Tony Podesta. He's a brother of John Podesta, who serves in Biden's White House as energy advisor.
All right, so let's move to the next piece of information, which I thought was fascinating. China is going to try to go into Gaza under the excuse of humanitarian aid. How do your whistleblowers say that will play out?
Well, the CCP has always been positioning itself as a peace broker, but they're the ones who actually stirred the pot, and now they're trying to pretend they can actually offer a peaceful solution for the Middle Eastern conflict. So they will try to position themselves as a peace broker, and they want to be among the first to enter Gaza Strip, and in order to destroy the evidences, to cover up, they're the, behind-the-scene actors who has been supplying weapons and defense system to Hamas, and so this is, CCP's game, just like they have been always using the fake names to cover up their real crimes.
Well, it makes sense because when you look at Hamas, even I have questioned, how do they have so many rockets at this point? Most people think they would run out by now, and it seems like they have an unlimited supply. China may be the answer here.
And they also are acting very fearlessly, acting like they're not worried about running short or running out of the stockpile, because just weeks before Hamas attack of Israel, CCP has been sending large amount of military supplies and even personnel to Egypt. To the Egyptian seaports and airports. And then Egypt then distribute the weapons supplies and personnel to other countries like Yemen and Syria. So Egypt is playing a very important role here. And also, let's not forget that Egyptian Prime Minister was just in Beijing last week celebrating Xi Jinping's 10-year anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative, and he actually praised the CCP as a role model government. And CCP has been training more than 4,000 Egyptian government officials, training the next leader in Egypt. So that's how close Egypt has been with the CCP. And Egypt was actually a very important ally to the United States of America. Now they're on the CCP side.
Yeah, it seems like we're losing allies left and right in that region. I blame it in many respects, this administration. This was such important information that you sent me over the weekend. I thought it was important that we get it on the show tonight. Nicole Tsai with the new federal state of China. Thank your whistleblowers for us. If you talk to them, I know they risk their lives to get this information out of China to the free world. So a big thank you to them.
And thank you so much. And again, NFSC does not take any political position in this conflict. We love peace and we love freedom, and we want to avoid unnecessary casualties for all the civilians. And we definitely condemn Hamas terrorist attack on Israel. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
You're welcome, Nicole. We appreciate you. So all of this brings us back to, what does this mean for the United States of America? What are the risks we face now in this country? It is clear to me with the open borders that we have terrorists already here. Our political correctness seems to be killing us, literally, folks. We welcome in many of these radicals to the United States. They are all over the country. Well, I saw an imam denounce the radical ideology. This is an imam in the Western world, and he blames the Western world for taking in what he describes as Muslim garbage, meaning the radical extremists. Watch him lay it out.
Society also has garbage. You have murderers, criminals, and then you have filthy garbage ideology, where someone says, you're a woman, you should stay at home. Or someone says, you're a woman, you need to cover, your whole body is a private part, right? You need to cover up. or someone says, this guy's a Jew, this guy's a Christian, they need to be, dealt with. This ideology is a filthy ideology. It cannot be respected.
No, it can't. And in fact, it's a deadly ideology, because if you don't agree with their radical way of thinking, they want you wiped off the face of the earth. Israel is literally proof of that, and the attack that happened there. Now, what have we done in the United States? You look at Afghanistan, we pull out there and we bring in all kinds of people from Afghanistan, and we have no idea where their ideologies lie. It is very, very dangerous. Why does the Western world welcome in what that man describes as garbage when the Middle Eastern world, most of these countries, do not let any of these people in?
The IRGC cannot operate in Saudi Arabia. Their supporters cannot have bank accounts in the UAE. The other extremist groups, like the Muslim Brotherhood, who are friends with the IRGC and Hezbollah people, they cannot operate in Bahrain, in Oman. These are Muslim countries. Where do they operate? In London, in France, in Washington, D.C., in Australia, in Canada, Toronto. They operate here. They have bank accounts. They register charity.
Think about that. We allow these organizations, call them organizations, they're terror groups, to operate in places where freedom-loving Americans roam and live, including our friends and allies in Europe. Look at what has happened to Paris. Paris is a disaster with who they have let into that. They're getting terrorist attacks left and right. London as well, he mentioned. So now we get to the question, where does the crisis really lie? Is it with Islam, or is it with all of us and how we operate? He offered up this.
I say, no, you are in a crisis. You went to the Muslim countries and you imported the garbage that the Muslim countries wanted to put in prison or isolate away from society. You went and you imported them. Why? For cheap labor. But these Islamist extremists, they don't want to work. They want free welfare. They want to marry French women, blonde hair, blue eyes. They don't have time to work.
You see what he's spelling out? Everything that's going on here in America. We imported the garbage, is his quote. And any Islamic extremist terrorist that's willing to put a suicide bomb on his chest and blow up innocent civilians is garbage in my mind. We're importing that here. Just as our southern border is wide open, what are we importing? Poverty, criminality, sex trafficking, drugs. We are importing everything that literally, if you tried to ruin America, you would fill America with it. This guy's on to something, and guess what? He's not the only Muslim that is speaking out about this. The Minister of Foreign Affairs for the United Arab Emirates said this. I believe this is back in 2017, but it still holds true today. Listen to what he says about the Western world.
There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
Ignorance, to say the least. You want to see ignorance? We have that in Congress. Ignorance beyond belief. Members of the United States Congress that support these terror organizations like Hamas. Ilhan Omar. She got so upset when a reporter asked her to simply denounce Hamas. She can't do it.
Why don't you want the Israelis to go after the terrorists that did that? How many more killings is enough for you? Is it 1,000 more? 2,000 more? 3,000 more? How many more Palestinians would make you happy if they died? Will you be fine if all of the people of Gaza were gone? Would that make you happy? Would that be the thing that makes you proud?
Let's not forget, folks, Israel didn't invade Gaza. The Palestinians, under the ruse of Hamas, invaded Israel. Israel is defending itself. It is not on the warpath of attack. It is on the warpath of defense, and there's a huge difference there. Now, why would we be surprised that Ilhan Omar says and supports things like this? Let's flash back to when she said this about terrorist organizations responsible for killing American citizens, and she's proud to say their name.
Every time the professor said Al-Qaeda, he sort of like his shoulders went up, and
Yeah, he's in command here.
Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah.
He's an expert.
You don't say America with an intensity. You don't say England with an intensity. You don't say the army with an intensity.
Qaeda.
But you say these names because you want that word to carry weight.
That word doesn't carry any weight with me, other than the fact they need to be squashed out like the cockroaches that they are. See, when I say the United States Army, I am proud to say it, and I think it's one of the greatest fighting forces this world has ever seen. When I say the United States of America, you better believe I'm prouder than I've ever been in my life, because this is the greatest country in the world. And nobody, no terrorist, no deranged lunatic, no one in the name of some religion is going to blow up American citizens and get away with it, and I'm certainly not going to be proud of it, and I'm certainly not going to sit up and say Al-Qaeda and ISIS. What needs to happen with Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Hezbollah and Hamas and the others, they need to be eradicated. Now, they never will be, because this is generational. They'll keep growing up. See, the fight against Islamic Jihad will be generational. It will never, ever end, but we cannot take our eye off of the ultimate prize. And the ultimate prize is freedom and the ability to live free, not in fear. And the only way we live not in fear is if we close our borders, enforce the law, and take out every terrorist we find. And that's the bottom line. Clearly, folks, we live in dangerous times. All of this is proof. You've got pandemics, shortages, terror attacks, supply chain disruptions, economy on the brink. We know we can't simply trust the government to protect us now. Now more than ever, we need to be prepared. Being prepared is more than just stockpiling ammunition and food and supplies. Being prepared should also include stockpiling critical prescription medications. That's where the wellness company comes in. The medical emergency kit contains prescription antibiotics, antivirals, antiparasitics that you would need to keep your family safe if any problem strikes, from anthrax to tick bites to COVID and more. See, the wellness company's medical emergency kit is exactly what you need to have on hand to be prepared. This kit could save a life. Go to twc.health/voice. Go there today and order. twc.health/voice. Use the promo code VOICE to save an additional 10%. All right, coming up, new numbers are out that show us just how many known terrorists were apprehended at the border last year, and it is absolutely shocking, plus a new memo that we have now obtained that proves Hezbollah and Hamas may already be here. Welcome back, folks. The frightening reality is that Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad may already be here in the United States. Now, this is not a surprise to me. What is a surprise is that the Biden administration would admit it, and they did it in a memo from the San Diego border sector to fellow Border Patrol agents that basically says fighters from Israel-Hamas war may be encountered on the southwest border, and it gives a few more details. No kidding. The new numbers are out. In 2023, there were 172 illegal crossings of those on the terror watch list, but at ports of entry, those on the terror watch list checked themselves in. 564 people on the terror watch list were captured. Now, that's a crazy number, and here's the biggest question. Who got away? How many more are out there? This is President Trump.
The same people that raided Israel are pouring into our once beautiful USA through our totally open southern border at record numbers. These are the same people, many of them, that did a number in Israel, a sneak attack. The same people we have pouring into our country by the thousands. Are they planning to attack within our country? Crooked Joe Biden and his boss, Barack Hussein Obama, did this to us.
Do you know, I mean, it's not even funny, but the memo literally says, look out for military-aged males. Look out for military-aged males. They're everywhere. That's shot by our own Ben Bergquam down on the border. Literally hundreds of military-aged males. People coming from places like Syria and Africa. And yes, I believe there'll even be people from the place they call Palestine. This is Senator John Thune.
September was a record, absolute all-time record. 260,000 people apprehended illegally trying to get into this country, 230,000 in the month of August. And the thing that's really concerning about it, and you referenced it, the special interest aliens now have figured out from all over the world. I mean, this used to be kind of a regional thing, Central and South America. Now we've got a lot of Middle Eastern countries. In the last couple of years, they've had 659 people who've been apprehended trying to come in from Iran.
These numbers are outrageous. And here's the craziest part. The Biden administration knows it, and yet they do nothing. You want proof that they know that this is a real threat? The ding-dong John Kirby, the mouthpiece for the president, Joe Biden, watch.
Record numbers of people who are either on a terror list or associated with somebody who is a family member, an associate. We're at record numbers for those. How worried are you?
We're concerned about the potential spillover from the war against Hamas in terms of domestic security. That's why days ago, I mean, within a day or two of the attacks, the president ordered the team, the National Security Team and the Department of Homeland Security to work with state and local authorities to make sure that we have the intel picture in place to be able to identify and potentially disrupt any domestic terror threat as a result of what's going on against Hamas.
I'm going to tell you that's maddening. Intel picture in place. Intel, all you have to do is take a trip down there and see hundreds of military-aged men coming from that region. You got the terror watch list numbers. What intel do you need? I could send my 14-year-old down there to give you intel. This has been going on for years, and they do nothing to stop it. Well, joining me now is former Border Patrol Chief and current Distinguished Fellow for Border Security with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Our friend Rodney Scott is back with us. Rodney, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me on tonight, Grant. Really wish we had some better news, but it just keeps spiraling.
Well, I'm with you, Chief. I mean, I watched John Kirby say, oh, well, we're aware of it. They're not doing anything. If you were really aware of it, would you start building the wall again, remain in Mexico? What would you tell the administration to do to keep us safe?
Well, first off, everybody needs to pay very close attention to any words this administration uses because they spin everything. And he said domestic terrorism. He didn't even acknowledge international global terrorism. He didn't say Hamas. They're oblivious. But here's the other thing. The 269,000 people keep talking about, that's only the southwest border. That ignores the coast and the northern border. There were over 341,000 illegal aliens encountered by CBP last month. The sheer volume is overwhelming. And here's the real threat. Not everybody's in our databases. As a matter of fact, most threats are not in U.S. databases. So it requires an in-depth interview to figure out if somebody's a threat or not. And those interviews are not taking place now because of the mass illegal immigration that this administration has invited and continues to encourage.
You know, Chief, I relate it to Megan's Law, you know, when you have to register when you're a sex offender. Parents will go on and think, oh, there's no sex offenders in my neighborhood. I'm safe. Well, less than 1% of sex offenders are ever captured. This is the same thing with terrorists. Oh, well, we only have 100 and something of them. There could be thousands of them in this country.
So the catch, too, and you've talked about this before, and I just want to reiterate, Border Patrol is so overwhelmed. That 172 people on the National Terrorist Watch List that were apprehended, northern and southern border, a lot of them gave up because they didn't know probably that we had records on them. Anybody that actually wants to get away from law enforcement today waits to be in the second wave. They pay the cartel more money to simply be in the second group of people that comes across after Border Patrol is completely overwhelmed. I'm highly confident, based on my experience and just common sense, that anybody that thinks there may be information about them or that is going to be a significant threat to this country and can afford it pays to be in that second wave. And unfortunately, terrorists seem to have an endless flow of supporters, as we've seen from all these idiots across the country protesting in support of Hamas. And that backs up your question about, do you think they're here? Well, that says it all. They're in the second wave. They're the gotaways. They're all over our country today. The threat is already here.
All right, look, I don't live in a Cinderella world thinking we'll ever have a totally secure border. It is clear to me that you'll never have a totally secure border. But we know we can secure it pretty darn well because you guys did it during the Trump administration and shored this thing up. How quickly could we get back to that if we had the leadership to put in place the things that need to be put in place?
So the linear border itself, pretty darn quickly. We perfected over my 30-year career, and I'm not just saying me, Border Patrol and others, we figured out how to secure that border, how to reduce the flow so that every single agent was more effective. But now we've got to go at this almost equally as far as interior enforcement for immigration and securing that border. There are so many people, that over 3 million encounters just in a single year this last year. It's phenomenal. It's hard for me to even explain to the average person the impact that has on the border and the country. But border security, tell Mexico to step up and enforce their own laws or we'll hold them accountable, and then go after the cartels. We could turn this around pretty quickly, start going back in the right direction.
I most certainly believe that to be true. Just the sheer messaging alone coming from Washington would turn around millions of people if they knew they couldn't get in here right away. But they refused to do that, so we're in the position that we are. Chief Rodney Scott, Texas Policy, we appreciate you coming on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Have a good evening.
All right, Texas Public Policy Foundation, great group, not far from where I broadcast from here in Dallas. All right, folks, protect yourself with gold today by texting America to the number 989898. You think you need to protect your portfolio? What do you think all this is going to do to the stock market? What do you think all this is going to do to interest rates? You think we're going to get way back down to the 1.5%, 2% number that we were at? Not a chance. Not with Joe Biden in office. So you better take the steps you need to take in order to protect your portfolio. One of those steps, of course, would be investing in precious metals. So our friends over at Birch Gold can help you do that. They've helped hundreds of Real America's Voice viewers do just that. You should join them. Go to Birch Gold by texting America to the number 989898. That's America to the number 989898. All right, coming up, 9 Republicans now are in the race for Speaker. I bet you haven't even heard of most of them. Who actually has a chance of winning, if any of them? And when will Republicans get on the same page? We'll get to that next. Well, folks, if you believe the mainstream media, they will tell you the Republican Party is in absolute chaos, and this speaker's race is just proof of the dysfunction inside the Republican Party. I will tell you this. I believe dysfunction has been alive and well in the Republican Party for a really long time. In fact, I have made a career of exposing the dysfunction inside the Republican Party and fighting for all of you, because there is a disconnect in Washington. We have more members of Congress that represent our values and viewpoints than we ever had before, but it's a small minority of those in Washington. See, most people in Washington, including Republicans, are beholden to the lobbyists. They are a ruling class of elites that put self-interest in front of national interest every day of the week. This speaker's race is putting business as usual in jeopardy. So Jim Jordan, he was way too dangerous, apparently. And that's a guy who everybody liked. If he can't win, I don't know who else can win. So now we have 9 Republican candidates in this race. Unless you are an insanely dug-in Politico, I don't know if you know any of the people on here. Byron Donalds, most certainly you would know. But most of these others, honestly, unless you're in the business, you're not going to know who most of these people are. Now, Byron Donalds, I think, is probably the most conservative of the bunch. He is running, but I don't think he has a chance at winning because the elites will not get behind him. I hope he does. This is why he should, according to him.
I think the reason why I'll be able to get there is a couple. Number one, being a member of the Freedom Caucus, I've also had the opportunity to work with members in Main Street, members who are on the more moderate side of our conference. We've worked well together this entire time. They trust me that when I say something that I mean it, and I'm not going to try to hide it from them what the realities are internally in our conference. Number two, more importantly, I believe we got to get back to work, pass our appropriation bills, get that stuff done.
So all those are great reasons why he should win. There are also reasons that he gives why he should, why he may not. There are those in Congress that despise the Freedom Caucus. By the way, Jim Jordan was a founder of the Freedom Caucus. Imagine that. They despise a group that wants less government, everything we should be standing for. But of course, these ruling uniparty elitists don't want less government. They want more government because power comes with all of that. So how will all this shake out? Right now, as we speak, the Republican caucus is in a meeting, a so-called candidate forum, listening to these 9 candidates. How will it shake out? Well, joining me now, former special assistant to President Trump and director of strategic communications for the Trump-Pence 2020 campaign. He's now chief communications officer for the America First Policy Institute. Mark Lotter is with us. Mark, it is great to see you. Thanks for coming on tonight.
It's great to see you, Grant.
All right, Mark, so I don't know. I hate to even ask you a prediction because I think that's probably impossible. But is there any way you see this shaking out? What are you thinking here?
You know, I mean, it's difficult because we haven't been able to get anybody to get to 217, and that's the challenge. You know, we are a big tent party, so we have obviously folks from very red, very MAGA, very pro-Trump districts. We have people representing districts that Joe Biden won because they saw the disaster of Joe Biden, didn't like the results, and sent people to Congress to do something about it. So you've got to try to figure out how to get one person that can herd all of these cats into 217 votes so we can get back to work.
You know, look, I don't want to go back to the past, but Jim Jordan seemed to me the best option because he was liked by so many. You would have had the conservatives that were on his side. He did a great job of bridging the gap between so-called elitists and the more moderate faction of the Republican Party. He now says his campaign's suspended. Who in this group do you think has the leg up on the 8 others?
Well, I mean, obviously, I have a lot of respect for all of them. I think Tom Emmer is he's already the majority whip, so he's number 3 in leadership. He's already gotten a lot of support from members of the caucus to become elected as the majority whip. You also obviously have Byron Donalds, who's done a great job. I mean, he was talked about in January when we were having the speaker fight with then Representative McCarthy before he became speaker. Obviously, he is an up-and-coming voice and person who can lead the movement moving forward. So, I think there's a lot of people that can make the argument. What's going to happen right now? The 9 of them are out there giving their speeches. They'll start whittling it down. The person with the lowest vote total gets lopped off. They'll revote until they can finally get to one person. But I mean, it's such like high school. It's a bunch of different cliques that are fighting over the cool kids table. And what they forget is that when you go back years later to your high school reunion, you forgot about all those cliques. You're just happy to see your friends. Let's grow up and be adults. Doesn't matter if that's the person you supported on day 1 or vote 1 or vote 10. Let's get someone to 218 so we can get back to work.
All right, I hate to even bring up this prospect. Is there any way that McCarthy somehow resurrects from the dead and comes back into all of this?
I mean, I think of course, there's a chance. I don't see it as being likely since we've now gone 2 weeks. I think they would have probably unified and done that earlier. But never say never in the House of Representatives. I didn't think we'd be going 2 weeks and still not have a speaker. But I mean, the one thing we've got to remember, and it's really hard for people who are not in Washington, D.C., the rest of America doesn't care about Washington, D.C. They don't sit around talking about Washington, D.C. all day long like you do, like I do, because I'm in this business. They're more worried about high school football or football on the weekends or their kids' activities. They don't even know who the speaker is. They just want stuff done. So get someone in that role. Let's get back to work.
Do you think there's one thing that one of these candidates needs to say or do to recruit the others?
I would love to say yes, but unfortunately, what I've seen about Congress is it's so much about who voted for whom for whatever position or committee chair years ago in some situations. There are ongoing feuds and going behind the scenes that in some cases date back years, which is often when you have a small majority. All it takes is 5 members to say, well, you can't get to 217, which is the problem we have seen recurring over and over again. You saw it with Steve Scalise. You saw it with Jim Jordan. And it's very likely you will see it going on again, that age-old issues dating back from 3, 4, 6, 8 years ago are going to be the reason why someone's going to say no on the floor, and that keeps you from getting to 217.
Yeah. Sadly, you summed it up. It's like cliques in high school that they just cannot get over. And I think more people were not voting for Jim Jordan because they were angry with Matt Gaetz and the others than it had anything to do with Jim Jordan. And, of course, the nation suffers. Mark
and
Lauder,
I just don't see how – yes, good to see you, Grant.
Yeah, no, go ahead. You can finish up.
I just don't see how people who oppose Jim Jordan by saying we don't like what happened to Speaker McCarthy by Matt Gaetz teaming with Democrats, then teamed with Democrats to keep Jim Jordan out of it. It doesn't make sense.
No, but – that's the problem with Washington.
It's Congress.
I guess I'd be unemployed if it did all make sense, because Lord knows I shake my head every day. Mark Lauder, thank you as always.
Good to see you, Grant.
All right. And don't forget the other idea being thrown around, that the Democrats would offer up the likes of a Liz Cheney to try to pull over 5 rhino Republicans to vote for her. And then they get that disaster as Speaker of the House. Be very, very brutal. There's still talk about President Trump. Could he go in and rescue the day through all of this? Maybe we're at that point. Just maybe. All right, coming up, FBI Director Chris Wray was interviewed by 60 Minutes and said some things that really are so hypocritical about where the FBI is today. I'm going to break this interview down for you. It's what 60 Minutes didn't say, do, or ask that bothered me so much about this interview. Folks, last night, 60 Minutes did a piece called The Five Eyes, meaning from our biggest allies, they had the 5 intelligence heads come and do a roundtable about the threat of Islamic extremism, and really China played a huge role in this discussion. And I want to focus in on Christopher Wray and 60 Minutes, because 60 Minutes didn't ask important questions during this interview. Let me play this first clip for you, and I'm going to show you the bias here. Watch.
Vigilance is heightened right now just because of the fluid and volatile environment in the Middle East and the ways in which that could spin out in the U.S.
By the time we had gathered for our interview, it had already spun out in the United States. In Illinois, a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy was stabbed to death by a man enraged by the attack on Israel.
Now, I will say my heart goes out to the family of that boy, and that boy, it's sickening. But he doesn't bring up the Jewish woman who was stabbed in Detroit, where authorities still don't have a motive. They say, oh, it wasn't anti-Semitic because her Jewish flag in the house was still there and they didn't take it. Something suspicious around that. They didn't show this pro-Palestinian rioters dragging a man from a car in Minneapolis. Listen to this.
Where you going now? He not going nowhere now. He not going nowhere now. Hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up. He not going
they
nowhere now.
They surround the car.
He not going
kick
nowhere
it.
now.
That's rioters, an elderly man. 60 Minutes doesn't bring that up. But they made sure they told you about the one 6-year-old who was stabbed because he was Muslim. As sickening as it is, you've got to tell the whole story. And so that brings us to China and what China is doing in this country. And I couldn't help but think of the hypocrisy of this story. Watch.
There was an actual congressional candidate who was very critical of the Chinese government. The efforts were initially to try to see if they could come up with dirt on the candidate to derail his candidacy, then to try to concoct dirt, just fiction, about the candidate. And then if that didn't work, there was even discussion about the candidate befalling a horrible accident.
Now, wait a second. That sounds exactly like the Steele dossier, doesn't it? Only it wasn't China that concocted dirt, that concocted made-up stories. It was a presidential candidate's campaign, Hillary Clinton, hiring the Steele dossier and Eric Steele to do this. Now, you got to be kidding me. Because in this case, oh, by the way, the Chinese dissident was a Democrat. FBI prosecute says you can't make up stuff. Watch.
In court filings, prosecutors say a Chinese agent hired an American private investigator to discredit Yang and left the investigator a voicemail saying violence would be fine. Beat him until he cannot run for election.
Is that the threat of violence in the United States that we face from the Chinese government?
We have seen over and over again efforts to really stop at almost nothing to intimidate people who would have the audacity here in the United States, where we have freedom of speech, to express criticism of the regime.
Wait a second here. Express criticism of the regime. Isn't that what President Trump was doing about Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, our own little axis of evil? Free speech. So the FBI prosecutes that crime, a made-up dossier to get dirt on a candidate, a congressional candidate. But they do nothing when an American does this to a fellow American to try to steal a presidential election, and 60 Minutes didn't ask anything about it. 60 Minutes didn't say, wait, Christopher Wray, didn't Hillary Clinton do the same thing to President Trump? Where's that investigation? Where were those charges against the people that made up the dirt on a candidate and stole an election? But no, they didn't do that. And lastly, I'll play this soundbite for you, cut 7, talking about China.
You seem to be saying that the Chinese government is running a criminal enterprise.
Well, I would say the Chinese government, if they want to be a great nation, it's time for them to start acting like one. And that includes abiding by its own commitments not to steal innovation. That includes not exporting repression to other countries.
How about saying, yes, China is a criminal enterprise. They steal our technology. They steal our innovation. They push fentanyl into this country that's killing American citizens. They manipulate currency. They do everything on the global stage to undermine America. You better believe China is a criminal enterprise, but they can't bring themselves to do it. This is how bad the Biden administration and the media is culpable in all of its 60 Minutes. I'm talking to you. Coming up, a French nun shows us how to deal with climate protesters. That video next.